Welcome to another PL Together Lounge Talk. I'm Adam Geller, founder and CEO of Athena, the video coaching platform for streamlining feedback to teachers. Today, we're talking with Megan Tschannen-Moran. She is a professor at William & Mary and also the Chief Academic Officer at the Center for School Transformation. Megan, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for this invitation.
Well, let's start first with something that you've written about before, which is in some ways the labels, but also what it means, which is the difference between a coach and an evaluator. So I guess maybe let's start by kind of clarifying, why is it so important to create a distinction between these two modes of interacting with teachers in schools?
Well, these are both really critically important functions for school leaders or instructional leaders, those who would support the work of teachers, but they're distinct. And when we're not clear about the distinctions, it muddies the water because they have a different emotional impact on teachers. And so being aware of that, we prepare teachers, we're sensitive in different ways for different parts in the process. So, and this is a long history of the tension between the evaluative functions of leaders and of the support functions. And at various points in history, those roles have been separated as two separate people, recognizing that it's really challenging to have one person do both of those roles. But then other times in history, but that's an expensive model. And so budgets get tight and, there's sort of streamlining. And so those get put back into a single person. And which is in fact challenging, but not impossible. At least that's been our premise and our contention. And I think if it's going to be, whether it's one person doing it or it's two separate people, I think it's just important to be clear with teachers or educators, whether we're coaching educational leaders or teachers or anybody in the school, when are they being evaluated? And be clear about the purpose that serves. And we in education we do our work on somebody else's nickel. We're not paying our own way. And so when the people who are paying the bills say, are the people you're paying with my money doing what they're supposed to be doing, we need to be able to say, well, yes, they are. And when they say, well, how do you know? We want to be able to say, well, we checked. That we have a thorough, rigorous process in which we know that people are doing what they're supposed to do. And if they're not, we're going to support them to get better, to meet the objectives that we have for them.
You talked about that challenge of switching between modes of being the coach and being the evaluator. And, it sounds like you're saying very clearly it is possible. And I think maybe it's easier to define when we're in the evaluation mode. So do you have any tips for someone to help them define for the educators that they're supporting how they are in coach mode? Like, how do they convey that? How do they signal that so that they create a dividing line between those two experiences?
Right. Well, I think we just say we've created a dividing line. I'm taking off my evaluator hat. Now I'm here, I'm all in on wanting to support you to be the best educator you can. So, and that's challenging when it's a single person because there may be some residual hurt feelings, or people might have been left stinging a little bit from a less than stellar evaluation. But really, if our attitude is that just gives us a project to work on, but you, the teacher, are at choice. What's the project? So if you want to work on something that came out of your evaluation, I'm all in. I'm here to help. If you want to have a different starting point, I'm there for that too. But at the end of this all, I want to be able to renew your contract. I want to be able to have you come back. I want you to be successful. And I want you to have a good year. I want you and your students both, or you and your faculty both, to really find joy in the work that you're doing. And that's not going to happen if we've got some stumbling blocks, if we've got some things that we need to work on. So I'm here to help.
So let's maybe define, in the ways that you advocate, what are the hallmarks of the coaching conversation? I mean, I heard you say before that it is teacher-centered and focused on what the teacher wants in those moments. But what are some of the other characteristics that you advocate are, critical to those coaching conversations for them truly to be in the realm of coaching?
Yes. Well, I just want to piggyback on that, being teacher-centered, because that is so important. That a hallmark of coaching is that we want to keep the responsibility for professional learning with the teacher. And if we are too directive, we are keeping the responsibility ourselves. And so that diminishes their sense of responsibility, their autonomy, and really their professionalism. If the only professional growth projects that they are engaged in are when we show up and shake our fingers at them, then we're depriving them of really that sense of ownership over their profession. And how a hallmark of a professional is that they always striving to get better. So if we make them too complacent, too passive in the choice of projects and how to go about improving professionally, then we're really deprofessionalizing them, and we're going to interfere with their motivation to be engaged in that ongoing learning. So, some other hallmarks is that it needs to be safe. So we call that the phase of our coaching model the no fault process, or no fault principle in coaching, which is that we're not here to wag our fingers at people, which it can be challenging. If you're a coach and you are working with a teacher that when you're observing in their classroom, you see things that just make you cringe. It's difficult to stay out of that judgmental space sometimes. And yet to recognize that our ultimate process, our ultimate goal is to help them to get better. That if we make them defensive, if we put up this wall of defense, as soon as they feel that we're shaking our finger at them and telling them they're wrong or inadequate or not doing the right thing, then job one just becomes defending their honor, feeling a sense of dignity, and and maybe their sense of autonomy as well. So we stir up all of these needs for them that then supersede the growth project. So we want to be constantly aware, what is our ultimate goal, what is the outcome we're hoping for, and what's going to be the best way to get there. And if we put them into this defensive posture, it's going to be much harder to get to that end goal. And then the third principle in our model is that we take a strengths-based orientation. And so that's similar in its rationale, but that we can dramatically increase people's motivation for moving forward when our projects and our feedback is grounded in what are they doing well? Where are their strengths? Because now we're not starting from scratch. We're not starting from like unknown territory. We're saying, here's some things that you are really good at, and let's use those. Let's build on those in order to engage in these other areas of growth, the goals that you have for improving.
Well, thank you for that reminder of the centering around the teacher, but also the importance of the ownership of the professional learning. Really, I think for me, it was just reminding me of that kind of stark difference of when the learner owns the learning versus when the learner does it because you told them to do it. And so those have parallels, of course, to the types of lessons teachers are planning, but also to the types of learning that we're facilitating for the adults and the educators. Megan, we need to take a break, but for those of you watching this, interested to learn more about Megan's work, head to schooltransformation.com. And if you're wondering what we're going to talk about next, or what else we may have talked about before this, or who else I've talked to, make sure to head to pltogether.org for the rest of this conversation and many more. Megan, thanks so much for being part of PL Together.
So glad to be here. Thanks, Adam.